Good morning. I want to first of all thank Chief Hayes White and the entire fire department responding solidly. There is a little bit of injury to one of our firefighters, but he's okay now. And I think even while he was injured, he was there trying to fight the fire. He was one of the earlier ones, firefighter Murphy. So I want to thank him for his efforts, but the entire department, I want to give them a good shout out. This was a horrific fire, as you could have seen from the footage, and I watched it intensely. In fact, I was able to text the chief during the fire as I saw some embers jump literally a block away over to a UCSF structure on top where there was some landscaping, and testing her in an effort to perhaps stop another fire literally a block away. And she got it, she responded, but the building maintenance crews from that particular building got up there within minutes and stopped that as well. I think that was critical because this fire could have jumped across to this development that we're in front of, which is a development by some very reputable developers for Mercy Housing. I know them very well because they're helping me with the 30,000 housing units we need to build. The actual fire happened with a developer called BRE. The contractor is Suffolk. I know them well because their new boss had been known to me when in my DPW days, and I'm sorry that that fire occurred there. It appears that the fire started above ground. They were doing some welding. We don't know what occurred there, and I'll be very patient to wait until the investigation is concluded in detail by our fire department and by the contractors themselves. But it is somewhat of about 180 units that most of which was, I think, destroyed in this fire, and they're going to have to make some assessments. I think we're very lucky that the fire didn't jump anymore. But I'm down here today, my primary concern was for the actual residents that were affected across the street. We have some 30 units that had to be evacuated, both for the residents and for their animal friends. I am thankful to Human Services, to the Red Cross, to Animal Care and Control, to our apartment association, or a part of our Good Samaritan program, and to some hotels in and around the city that would have taken on a responsibility to help with these residents who suddenly found themselves not being able to occupy their units. About 30 units on literally the frontage across this fire had their windows broken out. In fact, the building across, I don't know the exact address, but not only were the units vacated, many of the windows were cracked open, and this morning the emergency fire sprinklers are still on, and therefore the water is still coming out of those units, and so they were not occupiable. And my biggest concern was those residents had to be taken care of. So focused on that, and we'll continue to make sure our departments and their agencies are helping these residents out as much as we can, and we'll go through the roster of individuals to make sure they're taken care of. The other part of this was that this is part of Mission Bay. When I was DPW director, we focused on building an infrastructure, knowing that we wanted to invite residents and businesses and UC medical research facilities to come down here. Part of that infrastructure was the auxiliary high pressure water system that we made sure had to be built here so that we could support the residents and the businesses and the research campus that we wanted to have. Simply, the structure that we built worked. And I confirmed with all of the fire department heads that but for that high pressure water system, this fire would have been perhaps very hard to contain. And that water pressure allowed for so many of the 150 firefighters to have the apparatus, to have a system work in their favor to contain this as fast as it did. We are, and I have to say this, we are continuing to improve that auxiliary high-pressure water system, even as we look to the month of June for the bond that we have in front of the voters. And I'll be just unabashed in saying that that infrastructure is important because it worked in this case, along with the quick response from the firefighters themselves and the attention that they gave. Clearly, the big concern was that if this fire and with the heat, if the building and the structure collapsed externally away from the center, we would have had a tough time. If the winds blew in a different way, we would have seen more than one of those embers hit other buildings. If the water pressure wasn't there, we could have seen a worse fear, which was that the fire would jump perhaps over to this particular building we're in front of, which is hundreds of units that were being developed by Mercy Housing. All of this, I think we were both fortunate. The infrastructure we were building had to happen. We did not have any of the apparatus up with the development, the BRE development, because they were in fact installing that fire sprinkler as the fire occurred. I think we were very fortunate. We want to pay attention to the residents who are impacted. That's my concern today, both for them, for their animals as well, and to make sure that we can get them back quickly and to work with their property owners. A lot is still being worked on. As you can see, there are still burning embers, and so we're going to continue making sure that this fire is suppressed and in control. I want to thank the chief for her personal attention. All the firefighters deserve a little break because they've been doing this on a 24/7 basis, and I want to say my gratitude to them as we take care of the residents down here. With that, I want to say the chief want to make a little presentation about the details that they have, and then we can answer some questions.
Thank you.
Chief, sir.
Chief. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being out here. I also like to acknowledge the mayor. He's got great instincts. He's absolutely right. He did text me last night. We had a battle going on here. With his attention to detail, he personally let me know that he saw a burning ember shift over to a UCSF property, and we needed to take care of that. And so I wanted to say a personal thank you to Mayor Lee. You might have a career in firefighting someday, so thank you. Also to the men and women of the San Francisco Fire Department. It was a phenomenal display of teamwork last night in conjunction with the other city agencies that helped us. We had a lot going on here. We got this call last night around 5 p.m. It looked to be manageable, but it was immediately declared a working fire. Because it is a construction site, a building under construction, it had unique challenges, no fire suppression system or fire protection systems in the building. A lot of fuel for the fire, wood frame, and so it got going very rapidly. So very quickly it went to a second, a third, a fourth, and then eventually a fifth alarm fire. We had about half of our firefighters on duty yesterday battling this fire. We're still here. We have definitely not put the fire under control, but our objective last night, which we were able to achieve, was to contain the fire to the building of origin. As you can see, there's lots of other properties around. We were very fortunate that it wasn't as windy last night as we're experiencing this morning. That might have made a huge difference. But really it was the aggressive fire attack that we made last night that was able to contain the fire to, again, the building of origin. Crews did a phenomenal job. We're convinced that although people are inconvenienced and displaced, we're really grateful that there was no major injury or loss of life. We did have a firefighter that early on, when he was up on the ladder, did sustain some burns to his face. I saw him continuing to battle the fire, and it wasn't until later that he indicated that he had some minor injuries. He was treated and released. He's going to be fine. And then during the night, because we've been here all night, we have what's called a fire watch. Not just watching the fire, but actually actively still applying water into the structure. We did have a battalion chief who sustained a minor injury. She was transported. She's treated and released with an ankle injury. So all in all, given what we had last night, great work was done with little to no injury. So the two gentlemen standing behind me are my Deputy Chief of Operations, Mark Gonzalez. It was the fire department and the fire service is all about teamwork. It was a great display of teamwork last night and coordination. Our training pays off. Our incident commander is Matthew McNaughton, also did a phenomenal job directing about 150 of the firefighters keeping track of them, which is also another important piece. He had his assistant, she's here today too, Carol Conley Bowden. So I'd like to acknowledge them. We don't get these types of fires every day, but we train for this type of conflagration, and we were up to the task last night. So thank you very much. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
How would you compare what happened here to some of the bigger fires we've seen in the city?
Last night certainly was up there in terms of a large fire. The last fifth alarm we had was in December of 2011, out I believe in the Western Addition. So they don't come that often, fortunately. But when they do, we're ready, we're adequately resourced. Interestingly enough, last night we did have another fire. It was a single alarm fire that could have easily spread. That was on Turk Street. So our resources were challenged last night. And what we did immediately was open up our department emergency center to track what was going on in the rest of the city. So obviously we're focused here, but if something else was to happen, we needed to make sure we had the proper amount of resources. So as many people as you saw here last night, there were a lot of people behind the scenes just making sure that other elements and other parts of the city were being adequately protected as well.
Can you tell us about how long you guys will be out here, how long before it's really cleared up?
So the fire is not yet under control. The winds are exacerbating the situation a little bit. We'll be out here as long as it takes to get this fire under control. We have been in touch with the builders and the developers. When the time is right and when we can put it under control, we will have heavy equipment come out and begin to dismantle the structure behind us so it's safe. But the street will be closed indefinitely until we deem that it's safe to open it back up.
Mayor talked about welding as a possibility. Yeah, welding, right?
Same question. Yes, so obviously they do great work. Our arson task force is a combined fire and police unit, and our fire investigators are telling us that without the benefit of going into the structure, because that would be too dangerous, they're doing a lot of interviews. The crews did report that in the area of origin, which was down at 4th and China Basin on some of the upper floors, there was some torch work being done, some welding work being done. And then they got off around 3:30 or 4. So that's something that we're looking at. It's preliminary. It's still part of our investigation as we interview different witnesses. And certainly the construction workers are a big part of the interview process and the investigation process. But we did hear that there was some welding work being done yesterday.
It looks like it's close to collapse. Do you think that's going to affect people going back into the homes?
Well, what we're hoping for, certainly we were lucky last night when we saw some failure of the building and failure of the scaffolding. Most of it fell inward. We still have set up a perimeter in case the collapse is external, like the mayor said. And we think that our collapse zone is appropriate. We don't believe it'll impinge these buildings right here, but we're using an abundance of caution right now.
So will they be allowed back in?
Not until elements of that building come down. So those 30 or so units will be impacted indefinitely.
Do you think it will collapse?
It's likely to collapse. I'm not a structural engineer, but given the amount of fire damage and water being applied, it weakens the structure even further. So I'd say there's a high probability.
Do we have any idea of the timeline of that?
No. So again, the main objective now is to get the fire under control. We feel like we have that pretty much handled, but we don't want to take any chances. Once we stop applying the water, we'll do an analysis. We will have structural engineers come out, and they will begin the dismantling piece of the project.
What was the injury to the firefighter overnight?
He had some minor overnight. There was a battalion chief that was assigned to a fire watch, I believe, with all the hose and things around. I haven't gotten a full briefing. It was a left ankle injury, minor injury, treated and released. She's going to be fine, as the firefighter Murphy is from last night.
Chief, I know you said about half the fire department is responding to this. You know about how many firefighters that is?
A little over 150, roughly.
If things had gone worse, and say the fire had spread this building behind us, what would that have meant, given that half the crew is already out here?
Well, we would have had to evaluate. I mean, I can't emphasize enough what the mayor said. We were not only does our training is the foundation of how we perform. Not only was that key, but really having the resources in terms of water supply. That was huge. And if we did not have that available to us, the fire likely would have spread. So we would have made it work. We would have called in additional resources. California has a very sophisticated master plan for mutual aid. We may have had to consider that as well. Okay, thank you.
Welding
Most of them had been left, but I heard that there might have been a couple people that were still picking up.
There were some people that were picking up, and an evacuation was conducted to get those workers who were there to a safe haven.
Were they the ones who were welding?
We don't know. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.